Parmi tous les acteurs donc, qui sont autour de ConstruirAcier, on a notamment on a plusieurs adhérents. On a un adhérent justement qui va intervenir maintenant, qui est basé en Allemagne et qui va nous donner sa vision, de sa décarbonation. Dillinger, c'est un producteur de tôles de forte épaisseur pour différentes industries, dont l'industrie de la construction. Et eux, ils ont, vous allez voir, une application concrète finalement de cette feuille de route, et du coup appliquée à l'échelle européenne. Donc Tobias est en Allemagne, il va nous parler même, non pas en allemand, mais en anglais. Et donc Tobias, tu peux démarrer, ouvrir ton micro et puis ta caméra, comme ça on te verra. Et moi je vais défiler tes slides, parce que ici la technique, elle est un petit peu, voilà, comme un mécanisme très bien huilé. Tobias.
Bonjour aussi de mon côté, et merci pour l'invitation et l'introduction. Comme j'ai dit, je vais faire mon présentation en anglais. But I will try to speed up a bit on the because some of what I wanted to say was already said in the presentation before. So Dillinger, as already said, we are a heavy plate producer with two sites, two production sites, one in Germany and one in France. And in the steel construction business, we see ourselves as partner. We want to work together with the whole supply chain, engineering, construction authorities, to enable efficient, sustainable, and excellent solution. And there was already the word sustainable. So when we go, this is a very important point. So when we go to the next slide, I will show you if we want to speak about sustainability or we want to increase sustainability, awareness and transparency is the most important first step. And if you work in steel industry, to get awareness is quite easy because you only need to open almost arbitrary newspapers and you will find an article about the problem of the steel industry with the CO2 emissions. But we all know if once produced, it's very sustainable because it's 100% recyclable and very beneficial. So the steel production is a topic which we need to change. And especially also in respect of construction, a steel plate, as we are a heavy plate producer, is the major contributor to all the CO2 emissions of the final products like a bridge or any other construction. But we stand by our responsibility and we are leading the way, and there you can go on.
Okay.
We're leading the way in the climate. You can go to the next slide. Yeah. Leading the way in climate protection. So we create transparency with we are A-listed by Carbon Disclosure Project. We have the gold rating of EcoVadis. We also a member and committed to science-based targets and UN Global Compact. So we do a lot showing, being transparent, showing our route towards more sustainability. But the question, is this enough? Of course, we need to also improve the CO2 emissions. And if we look into our footprint on the next slide, we made a calculation on the CO2 footprint of one of our products, of one heavy plate. And it was a cradle to gate approach. So we checked all the emissions coming from the mines, from extraction of the raw materials, till when the plate leaves our gate towards our customer. So including scope 1, 2, and 3. And there we see that we come to a figure of 2.4 kilograms CO2 per kilogram of heavy plate. So, and almost 0.5 is coming from the supply chain, and roughly 2 is coming from our own production. So we produce actually double the amount of CO2 compared to the amount of steel. And that makes it quite clear that we have to change this situation. So how can we change this? And there was already in the presentation before, so if you go to the next slide, there was already shown that there are currently two different routes. We have the primary route and the secondary route. And the global share, we saw the European share, but it's not that different. The global share is roughly 70 to 30%. Even in our primary route, we already use recycling. We use 20 to 25% of recycling, scrap material. But in the secondary route, you have 100%. And the typical CO2 emissions, you saw that in the presentation before. But what is important to say is that there are big differences in regions and also in the products. And for the primary route, mainly it's the heavy plate or coil or flat products, and for secondary route currently it's in Europe it's mainly long products. So if you go to the next slide, you can move on, there's one more. So yeah, the question is more recycling and the shift to electric arc production a global solution for us, for Dillinger? We have a blast furnace. We are on the primary route, so currently we emit this large amount of CO2 in our production. So is the going to electric arc production a solution? And this is unfortunately compared to other industries like in plastics, where recycling is the top one priority, and steel, it's not the same because we already use almost all the scrap which is available, the whole industry. And there's not that much scrap left, we even pay for it. So if you click on, so this is not the case because scrap is not that much available. And if you click further, I presented, show you here some prognosis. This is a global prognosis on the steel production and the scrap, let's call it scrap production. And you see that even in 2050, there's a significant lack. It's less than half of the scrap which would be needed to produce all the steel. And if you click further, if you look into Europe, it's a bit different, but even here in 2050, we may reach an equilibrium of scrap versus steel production. But this is 30 years to go, so we need, or 25 years to go, so we need to find solutions in between. So if you click further, yeah, that needs, you need to have a primary route. And in order so the industry and the global solution to reduce emissions needs primary routes. And that means it needs also a fair level playing field and needs criteria which respect that we need primary steel and secondary steel to keep this steel industry running. So if you go further, yeah, as I said, we need a new primary route, and the DRI electric arc furnace route is one possible alternative. I will not go into much detail because we saw that before. So if you go to the next slide, you see why we are doing this. Because the DRI ERF route enables significantly reduced CO2 footprint. And compared to so, yeah, as compared to the blast furnace where we almost have two, we can halve it if we go to the DRI, even by using natural gas and normal electricity. If green electricity is used, it can even go to 0.7, and if it uses green hydrogen instead of natural gas, it can even go further down. These are literature values, so it's estimations and prognosis how they could evolve. But it's also clear it will not reach the value of 100% scrap route. So if you click further, there's some animations on it. It's important to say this is only scope 1 and 2, so we have to add the scope 3 to all of these figures. And it's not zero emissions. That is also important. It's not zero, but it is a significant reduction. And this potential, this reduction potential, we at Dillinger, we are committed to use that. And yeah, if you go to the next slide, you see we are committed to reduce the emissions. We will go this way. We want to go to change our production from a blast furnace BOF route to a DRI electric arc furnace route. And what you see here is not only a roadmap, it's contracts. So the 11th of October was a very important date for our company because we signed the biggest contracts in history on one day for 1 DRI plant and 2 electric arc furnace plants, which are now in preparation to be built at our premises. And that will allow us to, in the end of the decade, to deliver low emission steel heavy plates to our customers, and we will shut down one of our blast furnaces latest by 2030 and then have already a significant part of our production on the new route. So if you go to the next slide, So this project is called Power for Steel, and we do it together with our sister Saarstahl, and it makes us, it brings us in the situation to the Fit for 55 climate target. We have new machines which are built. As said, all these three are now contracted and will be built and start operation in between 28 and 29. And if we speak about Dillinger, Dillinger is the most important for the construction industry with our product heavy plate. We see on the next slide, we see what that means for Dillinger. So for Dillinger, we will start in Q2 2029 with a sharp ramp up, which allows us in 2030 already to produce roughly 1.4 million tons of these CO2 reduced heavy plates, which is 2/3 of our production, I would say, something like that. So even more. So it's a very big, important step, and it will bring us in the position to deliver for projects in the end of the decade large amounts, and the footprint will be roughly half of what we have today. So more than half of what we have today reduced. So yeah, this is what I wanted to show you and give you some main takeaways and on that. What I think is very important, if you compare carbon emissions in a project or wherever, compare apples with apples. So always have a look, are we talking about a final product? Are we talking about an intermediate step? Are we talking about scope 1 and 2? Or are we talking about a full product coming to, including the supply chain? And keep in mind, sustainability is more than only carbon emissions. We need to consider all aspects of sustainability. The production of the heavy plate in Europe traditionally relies on this emission-intense blast furnace route. And is the reduction we need in the steel industry, it cannot solely be solved by more recycling. We need a real transformation of the industry, a revolution to allow availability of large amounts of low-emission heavy plates. And this needs time. So we are starting now. We will be ready in almost 4 years. And it will be the biggest transformation project. It started, but not only us, also other heavy plate producers go the same way. So in the end of the decade, there will be availability of a significant amount of low-emission heavy plate. But this amount, this offer also needs a demand, and this needs to be stimulated. And it needs green lead markets, it needs tenders which take on this concept of asking for CO2 reduced steel, and it also needs a fair level playing field for the steel producers in Europe, but also for you and for the whole supply chain to be competitive compared to external market, but also internally. So with this, I want to thank you for your attention, and let us build the future together, sustainable, economical, and safe.